Dr. Anthony Fauci is weighing in on President Biden's push to reopen most schools within 100 days. Joining me now is Randi Weingarten, president of the American Federation of Teachers and a friend of the program. Randi, good to see you. I know you spoke with Dr. Fauci last night at an event you were hosting, your union was hosting along with the National Education Association. So does Dr. Fauci think we can get schools open safely in the next 100 days?
So Dr. Fauci is in favor of, Joe Biden's proposal, which is to open the majority of K through 8 schools for in-person learning with the appropriate CDC and other guidance in the next 100 days. But Dr. Fauci himself said, absent mitigating circumstances. So, you hear a lot of, if. So in English, what this means is that if the new variant doesn't do to us what it's doing to South Africa or Great Britain, then we actually have a lot of scientific knowledge from the fall about how to reopen schools safely for younger kids and for kids with special needs if there's no low or moderate COVID, if there's not more than low or moderate COVID in a community. And that was good for people to hear. And it was really good for people to hear him being clear and plain spoken about that, about, what those safeguards are, about vaccines. He talked very much about the need to get teachers and other school personnel of the vaccines as quickly as possible. He talked about how testing plays a role, and obviously masks and physical distancing and ventilation. So I think on balance, it was great to have Dr. Fauci yesterday. But what is really going on is that we are fighting two battles right now. One, we're trying to tackle a virus. And two, we are fighting fear and frustration. Huge frustration that the virus has seemed to have taken over all of our lives for a whole lot longer than anybody had hoped or feared. And number two, because of all of the misinformation that's out there, there's a lot of fear, and you can't debunk fear by telling people what to do. You have to debunk fear by meeting people where they are and really getting them the facts.
And Randi, I know that you wrote an op-ed for USA Today in which you outlined why testing is critical to getting the schools open, even before vaccines are made widely available. Do you feel like, are there enough tests out there, number one? And number two, are the schools prepared to do the amount or the volume of testing they're going to need to do to get schools open?
So the answer to both questions right now is obviously no. I mean, because if it was available, people would be doing it already. But I have a saying that so many other people use as well, which is where there's a will, there's a way. So instead of health departments who are, yes, underfunded, saying, oh, no, it's not my job, they have to intersect with schools and have a testing and a contact tracing process set up like New York City did. And, when New York City started it, you and I talked about it, months ago, it was rocky, and there's still some rockiness, but that really works. And the testing stuff is so important because 40% of COVID spreads asymptomatically, maybe even more. And so what testing does is it lets you see what is unseen. When you get a rapid test, it's going to tell someone, yes, there's false negatives, there's false positives, but in the main, it's going to say, if you have a positive test, that means you have COVID in your body. And that means you should not be out and about because you can disseminate it or transmit it to people. So if you do what Ross Shaw and I suggested, which is you have 25 to 50% of a staff tested once, twice a week, and 25 to 50% of kids tested once, twice a week, then what you're going to see is what's coming in and out of a school. And that is what has kept everything That's what has kept the rate of transmission really low in schools in New York. Obviously, that plus mask, physical distancing, ventilation, and the cleaning.
How do you envision testing going down for the students? And you're saying that perhaps weekly or biweekly for maybe teachers and staff.
It has to be. It has to be with students too, or we have to say to parents, look, if this virus, like if you knew that just by taking somebody's temperature, you would know whether, that's a sign whether somebody had a virus or not, then you wouldn't have to go to something more invasive as testing. But the testing is not as invasive as, a PCR test. Sorry, I'm a social studies teacher, not a scientist, which was like the swab really all the way up your nose. This is kind of like a small swab. People can take it at home. You can't get into the White House without a test. I bet you can't get into your studio without a test. Can't get into most industries without a test. And so this would have to be until we tackle the pandemic and have herd immunity in terms of vaccination. This is going to have to be just the part and parcel of how we keep kids in school. It's the protection that's needed.
Are you envisioning the testing being done by the school, by nurses in the school, by the parents? I mean, I know this is sort of getting into the minutia, but in order to make this thing really work, right, you got to get into the minutia. So how are you in conversations you're having with others?
So what happens in New York City, for example, is they have a testing van that comes up to the school, and then they just test, 25%, in that week they test 25% of the kids and the educators. Everybody has given consent. So, and that's what they do. And people get their results back. They're supposed to get their results back within the day, because it's useless if you get your results back, 2 or 3 weeks later. There's other ways of doing it. For example, I was in the White House last week. We tested, instead of what Trump used to do, is have the testing at the White House themselves. What President Biden is doing, is that they have a relationship with CVS. And, you go to a place in Washington, you get your test, you hear within 2 hours whether or not you're negative or positive, and you wear an N95, and if you're negative, you can go into the White House. And that's what, so there's different ways of doing it. Private schools got some of that PPP money from the COVID relief packages before. They have set it up as well. Sometimes they have a nurse do it. Sometimes they have the health department. So there are different ways of doing it. But the new tests are easily administratable. And so a nurse can do it. The health department can do it. You need personnel, because you also need the contact tracing. But it is key in a period of time when we're trying to do something that's so important as opening schools and keeping people protected. This way you see what is unseen. And that's why the Rockefeller Foundation and we have proposed it. And Dr. Fauci last night, obviously a better explanation than me, because he's such an incredible scientist. But, that is, part of the kind of tools of protection so that we can reopen schools for students safely for the adults and the students that are in that building.
All right. Randi Weingarten, president of the American Federation of Teachers. Best of luck with all your endeavors.
Thank you.
Watching.
We're trying. We're really trying.
We know. Thank you. On behalf of the kids, thank you.